So I want to do a movie review, and the movie is about a photojournalist, a photographer working during the Second World War, and the movie is called Lee. And it's about a photojournalist named Lee Miller. And in the movie, Lee is played by actress Kate Winslet. I think I'm saying that right. And it's kind of the story of part of Lee Miller's life. Now, Lee Miller was actually a fashion model in Paris, American citizen, but working in Paris, where the fashion industry was before the Second World War. So she's a model, that's part of her life, and she became a fashion photographer, that's part of her life, but this is sort of after that takes place. Now, what happens in Paris is she falls in love with Roland Penrose, and he's a British artist, and they relocate to London. Now, that's important because Paris is getting a little bit crazy before the war, and things are deteriorating, and so they leave and they go to London. He's a British citizen. She's American. Now in London, she goes to London Vogue and applies for a job as a photographer. Tries to get work as a photographer. Now there's I'm going to call him the photo editor, Cecil Beaton. He's there. He's not sensitive to what she's trying to do. He's on a different. They never got along. Let's just say they just never got along. Now, in the movie is based on a book, The Many Lives of Lee Miller, and that was written by her son, who never knew all of this about her until he found her negatives in the attic after her death. So I actually heard him speak maybe 2013 Art Gallery of Ontario. He was talking about her relationship with Man Ray, the artist Man Ray. And in the talk that I heard at the art gallery, so he's kind of bringing us all the way back to her very young years as a muse with Man Ray, and then she becomes a fashion model, and then she becomes a fashion photographer, and then she becomes this war photographer. That was the lecture I heard. But in the movie, we're just basically kind of on the war. Now, so they've moved to London, and she's gone to London Vogue and met the editor, and they become lifelong friends, as I said. And there's a photo editor there, Cecil, who she's not getting along with. Now, what happens is, of course, the war breaks out, and the Blitz, the British Blitz, the London Blitz is happening. So she's photographing for British Vogue. It seems mostly women's activities in the war effort. Anyways, there's the Blitz, and she's getting photographs of the Blitz and the aftermath of the Blitz, and preparation for war and things like that. And she meets another photographer. Now his name is David Shearman. He's an American photographer, and he is from Life magazine. So she's still with Roland, but David becomes a friend as well, and they work a bit in London together, kind of on the same types of things. So they become friends as well. Now, she's not satisfied with her efforts, what she's allowed to do for the war effort, so she wants to do more. So she applies through British London Vogue to become a war correspondent for the UK military operation, and that she is repeatedly denied. And then one day she realizes, hey, wait, I'm American. I should be applying through the US. So she applies through the US military operation, and she gets accredited as a war photographer, and so off she goes. So in the movie, Kate Winslet playing Lee, they arrive at Normandy. Now, they're not there for the Normandy battle. Like D-Day is done. The Allies were already established, it seems, in the movie when she arrives. But she's there in the war arena. And the press secretary, I guess is what he would be, he's not super sensitive to putting her at the front lines. So she's sort of stuck at the base area, at the hospitals, and she's taking amazing photographs for British Vogue of the hospitals and surgery and the exhaustion of the troops and the exhaustion of the surgeons. And some of Lee Miller's most famous photographs, they kind of reenact the scene a little bit here, and then you see the actual photographs as well. So they've been pretty true to showing her work. They do a good job of that and kind of recreating the situation. And she does these great photographs. Now, as time changes and the winds change, she is sent to, well, it shouldn't be the front lines. She is sent to further inland it's an area that's supposed to be secured, but it isn't. And she's there for a big battle, and this is huge hardship, and people are being killed, and she's right there to photograph it. So she's now in the thick of things, no longer just kind of at the secure base. And she meets up again, of course, with this New York photographer, the American photographer from Life magazine. And they start to travel together. So the war is continuing, and he's shooting actually, now I guess this is based on truth because of what I'm going to say next, but he's shooting with a Contax 35mm camera, and throughout the movie, Lee is shooting with Rolly. Now, I don't know if it's true that she only shot ever with a Rolly, and I don't know that he only shot with a Contax. But in the movie, it's not a movie about camera history. So they're using, a Contax and a Rolly, and it's not about that. So if you want to watch the movie, you're going to see some historical cameras, but it's not, you're not going to see a lot of different photographic stuff. It's a movie about a photojournalist. It's well done. It's worth seeing. It's a movie about a photojournalist. It's not really, a display of military cameras. So as I said, in the movie, we do see some of Lee's most famous photographs, and sort of they recreate the situation where she is. But we don't see very many of David's photographs. In fact, the only one we see of David is the picture of Lee that he took in real life. So I gathered some pictures from the movie, and I posted them on Facebook. Hey, does anyone know what cameras these are? And people kind of posted up and said, that's the Rolly this and that's the Rolly that, and people had different views, and maybe they used different ones in the movie than at different times. But interestingly, with the life photographer David, someone chirped in and said, it's a Contax 2, and I have it. He was my uncle or great uncle. I'm his nephew, and he gave me the camera following the war. So I have the Contax 2 that he used in real life. And I just thought, wow, that's pretty cool. That came kind of out of the woodwork, but very interesting. So apparently he did use a Contax camera, and someone on Facebook in one of the groups has the camera. Now, when you do a quick review of him and try to see his work, it says that he was a Leica shooter, but definitely in the movie he was shooting with a Contax. And since his nephew's got the camera, I guess that's true. Interesting little side bit. Now, the story is written by Lee Miller's son, Anthony, and he discovers her other life after she has died, which is interesting. So he didn't really know all this about her early life. Now, he spoke in Toronto in 2013. The Art Gallery of Ontario had a display of work that it was kind of about Man Ray, and Lee Miller had a relationship early in her life before all this, before the war, when she was a model with Man Ray. So her son, Anthony, he talked about the Man Ray years and then the fashion model years a little bit, and he wrote his book, The Many Lives of Lee Miller, and he talked about her being a fashion photographer, and then he talked about her during the war. Now, back to the movie. So in the movie, Paris is being liberated. They go to Paris. They meet some friends. Things are ruined. Everything is wrecked. And they realize many people are missing. And someone says, people are put on these trains and shipped away and never seen again. So she starts to kind of research, like, has anyone heard of this? Does anyone know what's going on? Where are these people? And so her and David travel towards Germany, and they're weeks and weeks photographing and traveling, and they're getting deeper and deeper into Germany, seeing many horrific things, photographing many horrific things, and they end up at the camps, the Holocaust camps, where Lee Miller probably took, I wouldn't say her most famous photos because it's horrific to think that you would get fame from this, but the trains with the Holocaust victims in them. She was there photographing that for Vogue magazine. So some tough images to look at in this part of the show. Horrific time in human history. And Lee Miller is one of the photographers who probably has the great collection of pictures of this world situation. David as well, for Life magazine, because he was there photographing as well. So That's kind of where this movie takes you. It starts off early part of the war. She's, you know, she's a fashion photographer. She becomes a war correspondent. She goes into war. This is a hard drinking, hard smoking, tough movie. Like, she's a tough individual. Kate Winslet plays her well. So should you go see it? Yeah, you should. It's great to see it at the big screen with the wraparound sound and the great cinematography. And they've put her in these situations where she took her great photos, and now they've kind of recreated these situations. So yes, you should see it. It's very interesting, and it passes to the next generation. Maybe you aren't familiar with Lee Miller. I really wasn't until I saw the show at the art gallery. Maybe you're not familiar with Lee Miller, but this will expose you to, you know, a great woman photojournalist. Was she one of the great photojournalists? She was pretty good, especially during this war situation. Before, I can't really say much about her work. I don't know. After the war, it doesn't touch on that at all in the movie. But during the war, she was a tough photographer in a tough situation in a rough part of town, and she came back with pictures for one of the great publications of the world, and you know, was able to tell the story of what she saw. It's worth seeing. Is it one of the all-time great movies about photographers? Well, this one's kind of based on a true story, so that puts it in a separate kind of area. But it's worth seeing, and it's worth learning about another great photographer. So I would see it. Is it going to stand up? Is it going to be blow up? Is it going to be The Eyes of Laura Mars? Who knows? But it's worth seeing. I would recommend that you go see it. And as I said, see it on the big screen. See it with all of that cinematography, because it's well done in that part as well. It's well done as a movie. And Kate does a great job. She's a great actress. Just saying.